The chamber of the Galactic Concord was silent when humanity took its place. The hall was older than Earth's first starships, older even than the first pulse of radio humanity had ever sent into space. Its ceiling arched high overhead, carved from crystalline meteorite that refracted starlight into endless shifting patterns. The floor was a circle of polished obsidian, and in the very center stood the table, the place where wars ended and treaties were signed. Today, the air felt like the stillness before a storm. Thousands of delegates filled the amphitheater, their voices a low symphony of clicks, hums, and strange alien languages that reverberated like wind through the great hall. Some glared at the human delegation as they approached. Others watched with careful neutrality. A few, very few, looked quietly afraid. Ambassador Elias Varen walked at the front, flanked by 3 admirals in deep navy uniforms, their rank sigils glowing faintly in the chamber's light. The 4th member of the delegation, a woman from Mars Diplomatic Corps, carried the sealed treaty case in her hands. Behind them floated a crystalline AI core, projecting faint threads of light as it listened and recorded every sound. No one spoke as they took their seats at the table. Varen placed his hands flat on the surface. To an outside observer, he was calm, expression neutral, breathing even, but inside, every nerve was strung taut. This was supposed to be the final session. Either peace would be signed here, today, or the galaxy would burn. Counselor Crix, the Dominion's representative, slithered forward. His scaled body coiled around the base of the dais, his vertical pupils locking on Varen like a predator sizing its prey. Ambassador Varen, Crix hissed, his voice dry and sharp. You have been given every chance to comply with the Concord's will. The demands are clear: withdraw from the outer bands, dismantle your fleets, and vacate all colonies placed in our sovereign sectors. Failure to do so will result in annihilation. Varen finished for him, his voice level. A ripple of reaction moved through the chamber. Some species clicked their mandibles in approval, others recoiled from the sharpness of the human's tone. Ambassador, came the soft, almost pleading voice of the Concord speaker, a 3-eyed being whose species had not known war in 5 centuries. Surely there is compromise to be found. Varen did not look away from Crix. We have compromised, he said, his words carrying across the entire hall. For months, humanity has offered trade routes, resource-sharing agreements, even reparations for conflicts that we did not start. Every time we came to the table, we came in good faith. He took one slow step forward, the soles of his boots clicking against the obsidian floor. And every time, he said, his voice hardening, you moved the line further back. Crix's tongue flickered once, tasting the air. You think yourselves equals, he said, amusement creeping into his tone. You think surviving your own planetary wars makes you strong. The galaxy is not your proving ground, human. You are outnumbered. Outgunned. A backwater species that crawled too far, too fast. The hall went still. Varen let the silence stretch, let the weight of Crix's words settle on the assembly. Then he said quietly, you mistake patience for weakness. Admiral Reiko shifted slightly behind him, a flicker of motion so small most delegates missed it, but it was enough. Through the neural link humming at the base of her skull, encrypted pulses leapt across FTL communication lines to Earth Command. Deep in humanity's home system, buried bunkers lit with red alarms. Varen kept his gaze locked on Crix. We came here seeking peace, he said, his voice growing iron. We offered everything short of our knees. But make no mistake, counselor, he leaned forward slightly, every syllable razor sharp. If it is war you want, then war is what you will get. And you will learn what happens when you corner us. The words landed like an explosion. The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates shouted, some in outrage, some in alarm. The Concord speaker pounded the table, calling for order, but no one listened. The air seemed to crackle with a new tension, something ancient, primal, that had slumbered too long and was now awake. Crix recoiled, his pupils narrowing to slits. You dare, he began, but Varen cut him off with a single raised hand. No, the ambassador said, calm once more. You dared. You pushed. And now you will see what stands behind the words, United Earth. He turned, gave Admiral Reiko a single nod. That was the signal. Light years away, encrypted orders reached waiting fleets. On the edge of the Tau Ceti system, carriers that had lain dark and silent for weeks powered up their drives, their hulls glowing with readiness. In orbit over Titan, dreadnought squadrons spun into formation, their railguns aligning on invisible targets. Farther still, hidden defense stations woke from dormancy, targeting arrays locking on the jump corridors that would soon blaze with enemy ships. Humanity had not come to the Concord unprepared. They had come with open hands, yes, but the other hand had always been clenched around a sword. And now, the sword was being drawn. Back in the chamber, Varen stepped away from the table. The treaty case, untouched, still gleamed in the Martian diplomat's hands. This session is concluded, he said. The Concord speaker called after him, but Varen did not stop. The human delegation walked in perfect formation out of the hall, the crystalline AI core gliding silently behind them. When the great doors closed, the chamber fell into uneasy quiet. Everyone present understood what had just happened. The galaxy had asked humanity to kneel. And humanity had answered. The first strike came just before dawn, if such a thing could be measured in the endless dark between stars. Velker's Edge, humanity's furthest listening post, a lonely orbital hub at the edge of Dominion space, was still transmitting routine patrol reports when its signal abruptly cut to static. For a fraction of a second, the Concord networks caught a ghostly flicker of visual, a massive flare of light, a shockwave tearing through the station's docking ring, then nothing. By the time the alarm reached Earth, Dominion strike craft were already spilling across the border. They came in force. Thousands of attack drones, hyperspace-capable cruisers, and heavy bombers surged forward in perfect formation, their engines leaving a glittering blue wake across the void. 3 human colonies fell under bombardment within the first hour. Outlying garrisons reported contact and then fell silent. But humanity had not been caught unaware. Far away, in the quiet dark of Neptune's orbit, the supercarrier Atlas awoke. It began with a low, thrumming hum as the ship's massive reactors came online. Section by section, kilometer by kilometer, the ship lit up, its armored hull glowing with blue-white light, its hangar bays cycling open to reveal the silhouettes of gunships and strike drones waiting like predators on the leash. On the command deck, Admiral Reiko stood motionless before the tactical display, her hands clasped behind her back. Her uniform was immaculate, her neural link glowing faintly at the base of her skull, the only sign that she was already connected to every ship in the fleet. Status, she said quietly. Drive cores at full charge, replied her XO. All strike groups report combat readiness. Dreadnought squadron standing by at Titan. Orbital platforms at Earth and Mars are powered up and tracking. A quiet, electric satisfaction flickered across Reiko's face. They expected us to flinch, she said softly. Let's show them how wrong they were. She turned to the comm officer. Transmit Black Sky Protocol. The order traveled faster than light, encrypted and splintered across dozens of secure relays. On the far side of human space, stealth frigates decloaked from silent orbits, their hulls shedding darkness like snakes shedding skin. Automated defense platforms spun up their long-range railguns, magnetic coils screaming as they reached firing charge. Deep in asteroid belts, hidden missile silos opened, exposing payloads designed for one purpose, annihilation. Black Sky had been humanity's contingency plan since the day they had first joined the Concord. If negotiations failed, if the galaxy turned hostile, they would not retreat. They would strike first, fast, and hard enough that their enemies would think twice before coming again. Hours later, the Dominion's first major fleet jumped into the Tau Ceti system. Their commander expected scattered resistance, perhaps a few defensive frigates, a token effort before retreat. What greeted them instead was a nightmare. The Atlas was waiting. The supercarrier blotted out half the tactical display, its massive hull bristling with railguns, plasma lances, and missile silos. It was not alone. For dreadnought squadrons flanked it in perfect formation, and hundreds of smaller craft swirled around them like a living storm. Before the Dominion could react, Atlas's bays opened and spat out death. Swarms of automated strike drones burst forth, each one AI-guided and armed with warheads designed to punch through shields and carve open hulls. They moved like a cloud of metallic hornets, weaving between enemy formations, targeting engines and reactors with surgical precision. "Rail batteries, fire," Reiko commanded. The deck shuddered as Atlas unleashed her first salvo. Tungsten slugs accelerated to a fraction of light speed tore through the void, striking Dominion cruisers before their shields could fully cycle. Ships that had taken years to build were reduced to glowing debris in seconds. The battle became chaos. Dominion fighters swarmed, but humanity's smaller frigates were faster and deadlier, darting between them and shredding them apart with burst-fire cannons. Explosions lit the void, turning the black sky into a hellish fireworks display. Reiko stood in the center of it all, her neural link feeding her the positions of every human vessel, every enemy vector. Her voice was calm, precise, cutting through the din of the bridge. "Squadron Delta, flank and drive them toward the asteroid field. Gamma Wing, suppress enemy bombers, don't let them reach our carriers. Bring the main lance to bear on that command ship. Fire on my mark." Her crew obeyed without hesitation. Moments later, a brilliant spear of plasma shot from the Atlas's prow, punching through the Dominion flagship's shields and carving the ship nearly in two. Its reactor detonated a heartbeat later, the shockwave scattering what remained of its escort. By the third hour of battle, the Dominion fleet was in retreat. Elsewhere, humanity's counterstrike was already underway. Stealth frigates struck deep behind enemy lines, hitting fuel depots, shipyards, and communications hubs. Orbital defense platforms along the border unleashed mass drivers at any vessel that tried to slip through. Human marines, clad in power armor and carrying rail rifles, made planetfall on Velker's edge, reclaiming the colony block by block. Each engagement was swift, precise, and merciless. Back in the Galactic Concord chamber, chaos reigned. Reports came in by the minute: entire Dominion fleets wiped out, colonies retaken, supply lines gone dark. Some counselors shouted for sanctions. Others called for intervention to stop the war. But deep down, they all saw the same truth. Humanity had not been bluffing. And the galaxy was witnessing a war machine the likes of which it had not seen in generations. By the end of the second week, the Dominion had lost 5 major fleets and a dozen key installations. The skies over Velker's edge burned with fire, but the colony was free. On the ground, human banners flew once more, and Marines stood guard over the landing zones as surviving colonists were evacuated to safety. Admiral Reiko walked through the ash-stained streets, her armor still scorched from battle. She looked up at the night sky, where the Atlas hung like a silent sentinel. This was only the beginning. The Dominion would strike again, they had to, but humanity would be waiting. And this time, the galaxy knew just how ready Earth truly was. 3 weeks into the war, the Dominion was crumbling. Their fleets, once the terror of 3 sectors, were broken across half a dozen star systems. Their shipyards smoldered. Their colonies were cut off, unable to receive reinforcements. Humanity had struck with precision, dismantling not just the enemy's armies, but the backbone of their ability to wage war. Yet the fighting had not stopped. Even as their losses mounted, the Dominion hurled what remained of their navy into the void, desperate to halt humanity's advance before it reached the very heart of their empire. And now, the war was coming to its final act. Admiral Reiko stood on the bridge of the Atlas, her gloved hands gripping the edge of the command dais as the stars shifted outside the viewport. Ahead lay the Dominion capital system, once considered untouchable, a fortress of layered defenses, home to their Grand Council and the seat of their power. No human fleet had ever come this far. No fleet of any kind had ever made it past the Dominion's last line of defense. "Jump complete," reported her helmsman. The holographic display bloomed to life, rendering the system in perfect detail. There it was, the capital world, its atmosphere glowing faintly beneath a web of orbital stations, planetary shields, and fleets arranged in concentric rings of steel and firepower. The Dominion had thrown everything they had left into defending this system. Hundreds of cruisers. Thousands of fighters. Even ancient war platforms, reactivated from mothball fields, now hung in low orbit like silent sentinels. Reiko's face was carved from stone as she surveyed the display. "They mean to die here," her XO said quietly. "No," Reiko replied. "They mean to make us die here. But they've underestimated us for the last time." She straightened, her neural link glowing faintly as she connected to every ship in her armada. "All units," she said, her voice carrying across dozens of light minutes to every human crewman in the system. "This is Admiral Reiko. Today, we bring this war to an end. You know your orders. You know what's at stake. Let's finish this." The command went out. And humanity charged. The sky over the Dominion capital became a storm. The Atlas led the way, its enormous frame bristling with weapon fire. Plasma lances tore through the void, carving holes in the Dominion's outer defensive ring. Behind it came the dreadnought squadrons, their railguns hammering orbital stations until they went silent and drifted like burned-out husks. Dominion fighters screamed toward the human fleet, a swarm so dense it looked like a second night sky. They were met head-on by humanity's strike craft, drone swarms and manned interceptors weaving together in a deadly dance. From the surface of the planet, massive ground-to-orbit cannons fired, lancing beams of plasma upward. One struck a human cruiser broadside, splitting it apart, but Reiko's voice never wavered as she issued the next wave of orders. "Redirect fire Group Alpha. Prioritize planetary batteries. Drone wings, suppress their fighters and clear a path for the dropships." The battle raged for hours. Bit by bit, the Dominion's defense ring collapsed. Human marines made planetfall and precision strikes, seizing shield control nodes and disabling defense generators. Orbital fire rained down, striking only hardened military targets, sparing the civilian sectors. By the end of the second day, the Dominion capital skies were black with smoke. Its orbital stations were gone. Its fleets were shattered. But the city still stood. And so did the Grand Council. The final blow was not a bombardment. It was a shadow. When the Atlas took low orbit, it eclipsed the dawn over the capital city, casting half the metropolis into darkness. Sirens wailed. Civilians looked skyward in terror. Then the transmission came. Admiral Reiko's face appeared over every channel, every screen, every comm frequency that the Dominion still controlled. Her voice was cold and steady. "This is Admiral Reiko of the United Earth Fleet. Your defenses are gone. Your fleets are destroyed. Surrender now, or we will finish what we began. There will not be a third offer." For a long, breathless moment, there was no reply. Then a single message blinked onto the Atlas's tactical display. "Ceasefire requested. Parley requested." The war was over within hours. The Dominion fleet powered down its weapons. Ground forces laid down arms. Human troops stood down but remained ready, occupying key military installations until the ceasefire could be formalized. And so, on the third day, in the shattered heart of the Dominion's capital, the treaty was signed. Ambassador Elias Varen stood once more at a table, this one far smaller than the Concord's, but no less significant. Across from him sat Counselor Crix, his coils slack, his tongue still. Gone was the arrogant hiss, the air of superiority. Now there was only weary resignation. The terms were read aloud. Immediate cessation of hostilities. Full recognition of human borders. Permanent seat for humanity on the Concord High Council. War reparations to be paid over the next 20 cycles. Crix's pupils narrowed as the last clause was read, but he did not protest. He signed the treaty with a flick of his claw, leaving a long, jagged mark across the page. When it was done, Varen closed the case and stood. "You wanted to teach us our place," he said quietly. "Consider the lesson returned." Outside, the city was quiet, smoke still rising from distant battlefields. Dropships passed overhead, ferrying human troops back to orbit. Civilians stood in streets and on rooftops, watching the sky where the Atlas hung like a silent moon. Admiral Reiko joined Varen on a balcony overlooking the ruined skyline. Her armor was scorched, her face marked with fatigue, but her eyes still burned with that same calm fire. "Was it worth it?" she asked. Varen was silent for a long moment. He looked up at the blackened sky, where human ships still glinted like stars. "They thought we would kneel," he said at last. "Instead, they learned we came ready." Across the galaxy, the message spread. From the smallest mining outpost to the grandest palace, every species heard the same truth whispered over comms and shouted in council halls: humanity had not just survived. Humanity had won. And next time someone thought to threaten Earth, they would remember the day the sky over the Dominion capital turned black. And know that humanity would be ready again.